So I was reading about the Miles Davis album Sketches of Spain, and before I knew it, I was playing this Israeli song about mothers. This happens to me from time to time when I'm doing research on some music. I love these accidental discoveries. So with Mother's Day approaching, let's celebrate with Ima Yekarah. In case it's somehow not obvious, I don't speak Hebrew. I'm doing my best. I'm gleaning pronunciations from recordings and fielding tips from my wife. But if you want to know what the lyrics are supposed to sound like, I would definitely recommend checking out the links I've provided. Ima Yekarah li Yekarah, Ima Yekarah li Yekarah, Shir katana shir ala, Ki ani ohev otach, ohev otach, ohev otach. So I'm going to feature the melody for this lesson. That's going to be the majority of what we're going to look at here. But at the end, I'll talk about the different chords and some different ideas for strumming patterns that you might want to try out. So the song is in the key of D minor, and even though it's in a minor key, it's not necessarily a sad song like we might normally associate a minor key as being sad. It's very common in Israeli music to express happy or joyous sentiments in a minor key. We're just used to certain musical associations. We're only going to need 5 notes to play this melody. We have our D. That's going to be on the 2nd fret of the C string. We have our E, which is the open E. F, which is the 1st fret of that E string. G, on the 3rd fret of our E string. And finally A, which is our open A. So D, E, F, G, A. So let's take a look at the PDF with the sheet music and tablature written out on it. We're starting off, like we see, on the 2nd fret of the C string, that first measure there. So we go 2nd fret of the C string, 1st fret of the E string, open E, 1st fret of the E, open, and then 2nd fret. All crammed into that first measure there. When we play it in time, it's a relatively slow piece, so it'll sound like this in time. So not bad. Might take a little getting used to maneuvering your fingers around there. Notice that my fingers are kind of staying in one position here. I've got my middle finger on the C string and my index finger on the E string. I might also want to play a D minor chord, or hold a D minor chord while I'm doing that, so I might use these fingers if I wanted to get some other notes involved. If I wanted to do like a chord melody sort of vibe with this, I could be hitting other notes in the D minor chord along with the melody. But we'll keep it mostly simple for now. So that's our first measure. The 2nd measure, we're going to play the 1st fret of the E, 3rd fret of the E, and then open A. Hear what that sounds like with the first measure. On the the 3rd and 4th measures play the same thing, so we get to practice that a little bit more. Again, I'm playing in what's called first position here, so my fingers are kind of assigned to a fret. My index finger is kind of assigned to the 1st fret, middle finger to the 2nd, ring finger to the 3rd, and if we had any 4th fret notes, I would use my pinky. In this song, we don't. But those are typically what I'm going to be using. So my anytime a note appears on the first fret, my pointer finger is going to take control, and so forth. All right, so let's play those first 4 measures, and I'll count us off. We've got these eighth notes in there. Those first 4 notes of measures 1 and 3 are eighth notes. So those are, we're going to be counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and to accommodate those eighths. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... So in measure 5, we've got almost all eighth notes. So I'm going to start off by walking through and talking through all the notes that we're seeing, and then we'll try it out in time. So we start off on the open A string. 3 hits on that open A. Then we go to the first fret of the E, and then the 3rd fret of the E string 3 times. So open A, first fret of E, 3rd fret of E. Measure 6, we've got a similar rhythmic idea going on here. We're going to play first fret of the E string 3 times. And we play 2nd fret of the C. Open E 3 times. And then we're also going to play the open A string at the very end there. Put those 2 measures together and see what it sounds like. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... I'll play those 2 measures one more time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then we'll finish off with measure 7 and 8. Measure 7, we are playing the first fret of the E string, open E, and then 2nd fret of the C. Now in measure 7, we're squeezing another eighth note in before we finish this measure. Going from measure 7 to measure 8, we're squeezing in an extra A note there. And then we play first fret of the E, open E, and then 2nd fret of the C. Okay. I'm going to play measures 7 and 8 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and... Cool. I'll do 7 and 8 one more time, and we'll put that whole row together. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and... Okay, so we'll play all of the second row, so that's going to be measures 5, 6, 7, and 8. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 1, and 2, and do that one more time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Now you might have noticed what I was doing with my right hand as I was playing that melody. Sometimes when I was playing multiple notes on that same string, I was walking my fingers. So, you know, if I'm playing consecutive notes on the same string there, especially if they're 8th notes or even 16th notes, if I'm playing them kind of quickly or I want them to sound smooth and connected, I can walk my fingers. So if I could practice it just on an open string, the A string is a really nice place to practice that. I could play the first time with my index finger and then with my middle. Index, middle, index, middle. And doing that takes less time than one finger, less time and energy. You can still do it that way, especially in a song as slow as this. It's not going to be bad if you're, you know, just using your thumb to pluck or just using your pointer finger to pluck. That's all going to work just fine. But there are some other techniques that this might be a good time to try out. Try getting different plucking fingers to get in there. All right, let's try playing the entire thing from the beginning, and I'll play it with the repeat and all. So, playing through all 8 measures 2 times. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1. Is it for the melody. So this sounds really pretty just playing that melody on the ukulele, but if we want to add a little bit more harmony to it, or if we wanted to try singing that melody, we can take a look at the chords that we've got. So you're probably familiar with most of the chords that you see here. We have a D minor chord, which is played on the 2nd fret of the G, 2nd fret of the C, 1st fret of the E, and open A under there. We have our F chord, which is very close to that D minor chord. 1st fret of the E and 2nd fret of the G string. Our other strings are open. We have a G minor chord, which is 2nd fret of C, 3rd fret of E, 1st fret of A, and open G down there. We have an A7, which is just 1st fret of the C string. Everything else is open. And we also have this A7 augmented chord, or A7 sharp 5. There I have open G and open A, and I have 1st fret of the C and 1st fret of the E. Like so. So let's see what that sounds like. I'm going to strum through the song, and my strumming is going to be pretty sparse here. I don't want to, you know, it's not one of those like kind of songs. We might be able to do something with that, but for now, I'm going to keep my strumming pretty sparse. Ima Yekarah li Yekarah, Ima Yekarah li Yekarah, Shir Hatana Shiralach, Ki ani ohev otach, ohev otach, ohev otach. Just going to stick to that, saying that first verse, because the pronunciation of that second verse is just way beyond what my throat can do right now. But I was basically just strumming the chord changes. I was just strumming a chord when it changed in its appropriate spot in the measure. So for that first measure, I'm just strumming that D minor, and I sing the melody. Ima Yekarah li. And same deal when I get to the A7, it's the A7 augmented. Yekarah. What's that third beat there? Goes back to the D minor. And then we repeat the same thing for measures 3 and 4. I start off with D minor. Now I could do more strumming in there. I could go Ima Yekarah li Yekarah, Ima Yekarah li Yekarah. I kind of like the openness of those sparse strums, though. Just strumming once per chord change. I'm also very inclined, you might have seen, if you were watching my left hand, you might have seen my fingers reaching for some of those melody notes while I was playing the chord. I really want to do that when I play this song. I want to kind of play... to play the melody and the chords at the same time. It just wants to come together. And basically the way that I would do that with a piece, I'm looking at the same piece of music that you have, where it's just the melody written out and the chord names are written on top. But what I'm doing is I am looking at my chord shape, for instance, D minor, and I am basically strumming down only until I hit the melody note. So in the case of the D minor, I would just be strumming my G string and stopping after I strum the second fret of the C string, because that's where the melody starts. And then I could follow through, because the melody picks up here. Like that. When I get to that A7 sharp 5, I'm going to strum my 3 lowest strings. I'm going to strum the G, the C, and the E. And then I'm going to play the 3rd fret of the E string, just like it is in the tab for my melody. And then I switch to my D minor chord, and I strum the whole thing, because I need that open A at the end of that little phrase. Now that takes a little practice playing what we call chord melody, where we're playing the harmony and the melody at the same time. I'm strumming at least parts of those chords and also playing the melody. It's a really fun way to do it. The way that I arranged this should make it relatively easy to do that if you are so inclined. This lesson I wanted to just focus on the melody itself, so start off with that, and if you're interested in some more chord melody stuff, I'm sure we can pull some of that out for future lessons. Let's look at the chords in measures 5, 6, 7, and 8. In measure 5, we have an F chord. So again, I've just got one strum for the F and one strum for the G minor. Same idea in the next measure, but now we have D minor and A7. Ki ani ohevo ta'o. And then measures 7 and 8 both have this quick transition from D minor, A7, D minor. Ohevo ta, ohevo ta. Anytime I'm switching chords kind of rapidly like that, I want to try not to release my fingers too far. I want to keep my fingers relatively close. Thankfully, these chords are pretty close to one another. The D minor, I just kind of move my index finger down to the C string for the A7, and I can move it back up to the E string for that D minor. So I don't have a long way to go, but even that transition, getting that nice and smooth and in time, can take a bit of practice. So if that doesn't come right away, don't worry. I could also do funky stuff like this. I'm playing that D minor here. I could, because my ring finger is already on the C string, I could slide that down and play the D minor, or the A7 rather, and then slide it back up and get my fingers back in place for the D minor again. So D minor, A7, D minor. Now, even a move like that, which could be considered a shortcut, is still going to provide its own challenges. So just be wary if you're doing something like that. It might trip you up because you're moving your hand out of position, even though it's just a little bit. So just be mindful of how those shortcuts could also throw you off in other ways. But that is the song, and I really enjoyed this one. It was a neat song I hadn't heard before, and it was cool to kind of work it out and listen to a bunch of different versions of it and play it on the ukulele and try and get those words in my mouth. And it was a lot of fun. I'm going to have fun continuing along with this and hopefully some other Israeli tunes. So if you have any suggestions for songs, please send me an email at tinyvillagemusic@gmail.com. If you wanted to look at, say, the chord melody version of this, definitely hit me up at the same email. Or if you just want to talk about what you're working on, I would love to hear from you. So thank you all so much. I hope you're well. Keep on strumming, and I'll talk to you next week. So with Mother's Day just around the corner, let's celebrate with Ima Yekarah. So with Mother's Day just around the corner, let's celebrate with Ima Yekarah. Ima Yekarah. Ima Yekarah. So with Mother's Day approaching, let's celebrate with Ima Yekarah.